Hi, in this video we're going to set up the Centrify App Access application, and the prerequisites for this is that you must have already configured ServiceNow as an application with Identity Service, and you should have provisioning already ready. In the previous video series we actually did that, and we were able to provision certain users and some roles. For example, I'm actually using here Diana as an Active Directory user, and she has the admin role. The first part of the video, what we're going to do is to create a user. And there's a blog post that actually helps on this. And what we need is a service user with minimum rights to perform application management and role management, right? So if you're familiar with Identity Service, you can create users using the admin portal, going to users. So I'm going to add a user, and this is going to be my ServiceNow service account, right? And I don't need an email address alias, but some descriptive name. And a password. So the passwords have to align with your service account security policy, right? And you should be able to rotate them, right? In this case, I don't need to invite the user at all, and I can flag the user to be a service user. So I'm going to go ahead and create the user. Right. Another thing that I need to make sure is that the user won't be challenged for multi-factor, right? And the reason being is this is a service account, so there's no interactions, right? So typically you do is by creating a role, right? So I already have a service accounts role created here. So what I'm going to do is add some members, right? So sn dash. So this is my user here. I had an older one here. Let me just delete it. And in terms of administrative rights, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the application management and role management rights. These are the minimum rights required for Centrify application requests, right? So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And in terms of my policy, I want to make sure that I have a policy that doesn't affect service accounts. So notice that I have a policy that I have created here. And this policy applies to service accounts. The way that you verify that the policy applies to service accounts is by scoping it here. And what is very important for this to work is that the login authentication is only requiring the user to provide a password, right? Again, this is an application trying to authenticate to another application, right? So there's no interaction needed. So I don't need a authentication profile that requires multi-factor authentication. So in this case, I enabled the controls, and the default rule was a password only authentication profile. For those who are not familiar about authentication profiles, you can go to settings, authentication, and ultimately when we look at the authentication profiles, notice that the only challenge that this is going to apply is password, right? So this actually covers the first part of the video, right? So first we needed a service account with minimum rights, application management and role management. Then we needed to make sure that that account belonged to a role that has those entitlements. And finally, that the policy that applies for authentication for that account only requires a password. In the next video, we're going to import the application into ServiceNow, and then we're going to do the basic setup.